Hello and welcome to the next episode of What Happens in Marketing. I'm Tom Heaton with the Las Vegas Innovation Marketing Association. I'm excited to welcome you to our next episode where we go in and tell you the stories behind the stories, basically giving you a peek behind the curtain on some of the marketing that takes place that makes this city great and makes us great across this entire region. I'm excited about this episode because we've got a fantastic guest. I'm excited to welcome Shelly Palmer, who's one of the foremost experts on Web 3.0 and really has great insights about where things are headed for the future of technology and how that will affect us as marketers, as storytellers. Shelly is a professor of advanced media and residence at the Newhouse School of Public Communications. He's the CEO of the Palmer Group. You may have already seen him on CNN, CNBC as one of the foremost experts out there. And he's also an award-winning author. He's got a book, Blockchain, Cryptocurrency, NFTs, and Smart Contracts, basically an executive guide to the world of decentralized finance. That is a great book for you to be able to read. And I'm excited also because he is the co-founder of the Metacademy. So please join with me, Shelly Palmer. Shelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. You got some great insights. I've been lucky enough to be able to hear a little bit about what you have in terms of thoughts for where the future of all of this is going. And I'd ask you just to kind of get us started with some of your thoughts about how brands and agencies should be prepared for the future of what's coming with Web 3.0.
Look, it's a loaded question because we're in the middle of what most people are describing as crypto winter. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are feeling the chill, although there's a little bit of a resurgence on the day we're recording this. In practice, crypto is off its high, which I'm calling the middle of 21, by somewhere between 50 to 70%. So most of the crypto millionaires are now crypto thousandaires. And, this isn't great news for them. No. But it is great news, oddly enough, for people who are in the business of Web3. What I mean by this is, there were a lot of get-rich-quick schemes, and there were a lot of people who were doing what I would consider untoward stuff, not to be confused with the stuff that you've heard about FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. That's a straight-up criminal in a centralized exchange. That's the equivalent of giving someone at Citibank or Chase your money and having them squander it or do something with it or steal it. So that was about as far from actual crypto, the centralized exchange FTX, as you could get. You don't hear these kinds of stories with the decentralized exchanges like Uniswap or what have you. But at the end of the day, we're experiencing this massive shakeup in the business. And the bad news is that a lot of people, honest people, have lost a lot of money. Some people who maybe didn't do their own homework, who didn't do the research they maybe should have done, got hurt. At the end of the day, though, what's remains is actually a group of very serious people who understand the underlying technology of blockchain and smart contracts and are putting them to very, very good use. The way I like to talk about it is when the dot-com bubble burst around 2000, we saw $1 trillion worth of value evaporate in probably an 8 to 10 month period of time. But it didn't change the internet. We were still using the internet. We were still going to use the World Wide Web. Web 2, as we know it today, a data-driven web, wasn't going anywhere. Wall Street had a bubble. There was a financial crisis of confidence inside of all of the companies that people started to look at profit versus growth, and there were different metrics that needed to be applied. But ultimately, the internet didn't slow down in any way. It took a while before Wall Street came back. And so we're there now. We're at this very interesting inflection point where a lot of the speculators are off crypto writ large or decentralized finance writ large. The people who understand the underlying technology, which is blockchain and smart contracts, are as bullish as ever. And we see an awful lot of good stuff being done right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's even part of your book. The future is coming. It's going to be something that will continue on. Web 3.0 isn't going to go away anytime soon. We're just going to go through maybe some of these peaks and valleys and be able to keep pushing towards that greater future. And that's what we're excited about, being able to hear from you on this. Talk about like the agency side of things. And, for us, we are an entertainment industry. I want to ask you, one of the big things that you talk about in your book is utilizing NFTs as a potential ticketing platform. Can you go into a little bit more detail of that, like how NFTs that maybe we don't think of as that sort of thing, how they could be utilized in that sense?
Well, I think we're taking a giant step back. We have to understand that all NFTs are smart contracts, and a smart contract is exactly like a regular contract, except that when the terms and conditions of the contract are met, the contract executes automatically, almost always in cryptocurrency, although it doesn't need to. And so if you think of building out environments that might have a trustless component where people who don't know and or trust each other would need to transact business and they would require safeguards, now a smart contract makes sense. And if you think about ticketing, that's one of the really obvious places you could use a smart contract. I mint a ticket the way I would mint an NFT. The smart contract says that the holder of this smart contract is entitled to enter the facility on a given date and time to experience an event. If that person wants to sell, they can go to an open exchange and the market will set the price. You can also set terms and conditions. So the original creator of the event or the promoter of the event or stakeholders like the artists can carve out a royalty for themselves so that each time the ticket changes hands prior to the event or after the event, if it becomes a digital collectible, that they are remunerated as well. And so you get the opportunity to create what we like to call a Web3 environment. And what does that mean? There's no technical definition for Web3. There are a lot of people that have a lot of definitions about either Web3 or the metaverse. They confuse them with each other. They interchange these words willy-nilly. We have a philosophical definition of the web, which of Web3, which would be that you have a platform of decentralized tools that allow both users and creators to share in the value they create. Under these circumstances, ticketing with smart contracts makes great sense because the users get to share in the value they create. If they buy a ticket and they can't use it, they can sell it. If they buy a ticket to speculate, they can also sell it. And the creators or stakeholders can also share in that value by assigning a royalty to the terms and conditions of the contract. Now, there's a lot of stuff to get worked out. It's not as simple as it sounds, because while NFTs do make good tickets for sure, and they do empower you to have a secondary market where everyone can share, when you have an edge case like I lost my ticket, or this is my grandmother and the ticket's not here, or someone's in my seat, it's on a blockchain. It takes a second for the mechanisms in place to quickly check the database because blockchains don't make particularly good databases. So there are a lot of different schemas and there are a lot of different approaches to solving some of these tactical problems. The concept of using an NFT as a ticket and then ultimately commemorative, digital collectible, is pretty solid and pretty sound, and people are using NFTs that way. I think it's really important, though, to understand that it's generally not in a vacuum, meaning that smart contracts are much more powerful than just the ticketing app itself. And you can think about it for fan development over time. And what I mean by that is when you have a business relationship with someone, if you take their credit card, you're entitled to transact with them for that transaction, but also for the next year or so, depending on the state you're in and what jurisdiction, if it's GDPR, whether it's America, whether it's Asia, all the laws are slightly different, but ultimately, wherever you find yourself, there are rules of law that says for some period of time, usually 13 months or so, you can interact via email, you can solicit, you have a working business relationship. This is important because you also are entitled to the first party data from that transaction, which you can use to your benefit. So you've got a wallet that has a smart contract in it. Your smart contract may be transferred to another wallet or another wallet or another wallet. You have the first party data for all those wallets because you know where the smart contract has been. All of a sudden, you have a way to look at the wallet, understand what's in it, and also understand how you might put that first party data to good use. In a world where Apple has afflicted, I'll say that with a tongue firmly in cheek, afflicted their Apple Tracking Transparency, their ATT filters on all iPhone owners so that you can't really follow someone around the web on an Apple device. And with Google threatening as the last big browser to end third-party cookies, all of a sudden this starts to look like a really good way to collect and use first-party data, and a really good way to turn that data into action. So there is a lot. You can go as deep as you want to go into this concept of smart contracts as for ticketing or fan development.
Yeah, when you talk about the idea of being able to use some of that first-party data in a way that benefits the user too, and that gets into some of the loyalty programs. If I'm a consistent buyer of blank tickets, or if that ticket then becomes a collectible, there's different opportunities for that to continue to benefit the end user, not just the person receiving the data as well. Can you expand a little bit more on what those loyalty programs could potentially mean for brands and agencies out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that was a perfect time to talk about what an NFT actually is.
Yeah.
One of my favorite slides from a deck that I use when I talk about this shows a picture of an ERC 721 contract on one half of the slide. On the other half of the slide, I have a picture of a Bored Ape. And the title of the slide is "One of These is Not an NFT." The picture of the Bored Ape is a picture of a Bored Ape. It's a JPEG file or a GIF file or whatever format that picture's in. The NFT is the contract. And the way you need to think about an NFT in the context of this discussion, you go into a grocery store and you buy your groceries, and the cashier gives you a receipt, and you go to walk out the door, and the guard stops you and says, "Excuse me, can you prove that you own what's in the bag?" The guard looks at your receipt and looks in the bag. The guard does not care what's in the bag as long as it matches the receipt. And if what's in the bag matches the receipt, the guard lets you pass. The NFT is the receipt. Period. End of story. The NFT is not the asset. It is a receipt that proves you own the asset. This is critically important when you start talking about digital collectibles, because we think of digital collectibles as the Bored Ape or the ticket stub.
Right.
It isn't. It's the data in the blockchain that says you were part of this transaction. And so that data is stored, and that becomes critical to a loyalty program. What's the history of the transactions? They're all in the wallet on the blockchain. And so this is actually a really easy, good way to allow users to keep their anonymity, because I don't need to know whose wallet this is. I simply need to know that this wallet has these privileges because it has had these number of transactions in it, which meet some criteria that I've set. It's kind of an interesting way for a marketer to look at a data set. Ordinarily, what we do is we create a single view of the customer in a CRM system, HubSpot, Salesforce, something proprietary, where you are creating these enriched profiles, and your goal is to know everything you could possibly know about the customer. Do they over-index on BMWs? Do they under-index on laundry detergent? Are they who are they, and what are their propensities, and how likely are they to be loyal to your brand, or how likely are they to buy or respond to some kind of offer? But you don't need to do that in this environment. In this environment, the wallet is holding the information you need, and you don't need to know who the person is. It is a de facto anonymous ID. So a lot of marketers are starting to understand the power of this. And I think consumers over time are going to understand how powerful it is for you to have maybe a couple different wallets and decide which digital wallet's going to be exposed to which kinds of offers. Not so different than when you have a junk email address. When a website says, "Give me your email and I'll verify it's you," and you're like, "I don't know if I like these guys enough to give my email address." So you give them your junk email. You give me your
Yep.
So I mean, it's like, okay, so I have a disposable wallet. I'll have an important wallet. We as consumers will figure out what this means to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it gives me hope that at some point I may have an AOL wallet that I'll give out for when I suspect that I'll probably get spammed out of it. That's it's a great way of looking at it. It's a great idea that the consumers will have a little bit more control over the data that they're sharing. It's not just a blanket statement of, yes, I'm going to do business with you. Now, here's everything from my firstborn child's name to all my credit card transactions over the last 6 years to everything else that comes along with this data. We could be a little bit more selective with what data is actually being shared with whom and give them the opportunity. Is that sounding correct based on what you're
That's
saying?
100% right.
Yeah.
You can. There are a couple different ways that this is being attempted right now.
Mm-hmm.
One is called self-sovereign identification, or SSI. Mm-hmm. The other is decentralized identification, or DID. And there are a couple other schemas that are out there that utilize blockchain and smart contracts, what you and I would call NFTs, or commonly known as NFTs, but are really, again, just smart contracts. And the goal there, imagine the following. I walk up to a bar right now in New York State, because the law in New York State is you need to be over the age of 21 to walk into the bar. Mm-hmm. So I go to the bar and there's a bouncer at the door. And the bouncer says, "May I see your license, please?" And you have no choice. Mm-hmm. You could probably use your passport. It's got your birthday on it too, but you're going to produce an official document. Mm-hmm. And this official document is going to have your picture, which is what the bouncer will use to identify you. Mm-hmm. Your license number, which they don't need, mm-hmm. your address, which they don't need, your full name, which they don't need, mm-hmm. and your birthday, which is the only thing they need. Mm-hmm. So that's today. Imagine the exact same thing, but imagine it in a Web3 environment. I have a biometrically certified device on me, my phone or augmented reality glasses or whatever I've got that is holding my digital ID or my self-sovereign ID. I don't even need a bouncer. The door could be locked. I walk up to the door. It checks to see if I'm over the age of 21, mm-hmm. because the only data that I'm willing to share with the bar door mm-hmm. is that I'm 21 years old, my actual birth date, nothing else. Yep. The door opens up automatically, but when I walk in, it knows the wallet that it just allowed in. It goes, "Wow, you've been here a lot. You get special discounts. We're going to get you in the VIP room. We're going to give you special seating or whatever." You would be entitled to all kinds of perks. And to the point that you were making before about loyalty, mm-hmm. this is like super, super interesting loyalty, mm-hmm. because you don't need to have been part of a loyalty program to have those transactions stored in that wallet. They're just there. And so it's not like you had to sign up or go through logins. It's like the wallet is checked as it walks in. Whatever data you say that you allow this bar to have access to, that's the data it's going to have. So again, it's users and creators sharing the value they create. And here, the bar owner benefits because they are able to enhance the experience if we're a loyal customer, mm-hmm. and you get a great experience because you're getting the value that you've created by being a loyal customer. So right. A lot of goodness comes out of that kind of environment, and we're on our way there now. That's where the smart money is. The smart mm-hmm. money is into decentralized identification, of self-sovereign identification, and different ways that we will be able to interact and transact with better anonymity and better data hygiene.
Yeah, I like that as a future thought. It's a great thing for us to strive to. I'm excited to hear that we're going to continue to make those points as we continue to go on. I want to go back a little bit to something you mentioned when we were talking about ticketing, about the idea of content creators. And we have a lot of content creators in our audience, our members, people that are just building things out, whether it's artwork, whether it's copy, content, stories, things like that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how these content creators can be thinking about the use of NFTs and smart contracts, everything like that, when it comes to content they create.
There are a couple of really important points. One is, what are the intellectual property rights that you want to transfer, don't want to transfer? A lot of people got really caught up in this, and not in a good way. For example, we were talking about Bored Ape Yacht Club. Mm-hmm. Bored Ape Yacht Club created 10,000 generative NFTs on about 10 different Bored Ape main characters. Mm-hmm. Unlike a lot of NFTs, they said in their foundational documents online that they were transferring the intellectual property for the Bored Ape to you, the buyer. So when you purchased your Bored Ape, you were also purchasing the intellectual property rights to that Bored Ape and could do things with it, like make a TV show or animate the character or do whatever you want to do, make children's books. This is your Bored Ape. Give it a name. Do whatever you want. As it turns out, they were lying. Now, they didn't know they were lying. I don't believe they lied on purpose. They just didn't do their homework. Imagine the character Mickey Mouse. I think you can get that in your head pretty quickly.
Yep.
Now imagine the character Mickey Mouse with a cigar and an earring. Now imagine another Mickey Mouse wearing a hat and sunglasses. Those are not three distinct works. One of them is Mickey Mouse, the copyrighted character. The others are what's known as derivative works. They are substantially Mickey Mouse with accessories. So they have about 10 different Bored Apes and about 9,990 derivative works. They should have remunerated the first 10 rights holders every time a derivative work was created, and then not transferred the intellectual property rights, simply created a royalty scheme where the first 10 owners were the ultimate owners of the works that would be derived from them. They didn't. They gave everyone the intellectual, they said, their own copyright to the work. Not true. So it wouldn't stand up in court because it was a derivative work. And by not understanding the copyright law, when they needed to sue someone for copyright infringement, they didn't have the rights to do so. They had to sue on trademark. They could sue on the trademark Bored Ape Yacht Club, which was a trademark that they had paid for and researched and were granted. But so trademark infringement, they had no trouble suing under. Whether they prevail in the case, that's yet to be seen. But there was no standing because they had absolutely no rights to into the intellectual property that they said they had granted. So when you're a creator, you need to understand what you're transferring. Are you creating something for fair use? For example, in the old days, you might put something on a CD or a DVD. Remember those? And they get sold in a record store. Using even an older term. We never called them CD stores, did we?
Never made it that far, no.
Yeah, I know. So they get sold in a record store. So, or wherever they got sold. Walmart, the audio department at Walmart. The person who bought that CD or DVD had the right to what was known as fair use. They could play that song at home. They could have a party and play the song for people. What they couldn't do, and they could even sell the CD or the DVD at a garage sale or a swap meet or to a collector if it was unique and special, right? Oh, I have the, one of one test-proofed CD of the Beatles' White Album, or whatever, and it's worth $10,000. No one's going to argue you could sell that. It's yours. You could sell it. What you couldn't do is you couldn't go to a CD pressing plant, take your CD, have 10,000 of them made, and sell them as your property, and get remunerated by it. You couldn't be enriched by other people's work. That's illegal. That's equivalent of stealing intellectual property. So there's fair use. Are you expecting your consumers, are you expecting your fans to work under or to purchase your NFT or to somehow have just fair use rights? Or are you transferring more than that? Now, two things people have done, creators have done. One is they've funded projects by creating NFTs and saying, I will sell you an NFT for $25 or at auction. They start at $25 and they go up to whatever. I'm going to use these NFTs as foundational tokens for this project. I'm selling off 10% of my project, and you're entitled by smart contract to 10% of my royalties or 10% of future earnings of this group of songs, this album, or this project. It's dicey because the SEC thinks that might be a security, not an NFT. But depending on how that all ends up, we've seen that in the past. The other way that creators have used NFTs very effectively is to tokenize access to other kinds of loyalty programs or fan enrichment programs. For example, Blau, which is written 3LAU. If you're looking for it, you won't find it under Blau. It's written in Leet. Did a project where we put out there were 10,000 collector's edition vinyl records.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get an opportunity to purchase one of those, you needed to purchase an NFT to get you in the game, and those were at auction.
Hmm.
So you drop your $25, pick up your NFT or whatever it ended up costing you, and then you're in a lottery to be able to purchase one of the 10,000 limited edition vinyls. A lot of artists have done stuff like this. I've seen it very successfully done. Funding albums, I've seen it successfully done. Gauging market interest for a project. Is this going to work? Are we going to be able to sell enough downloads, or are we going to be able to sell enough vinyls? Because vinyls are, physical goods people tend to want to collect right now. So there's a lot of interesting ways that music creators are using these tools. For fine artists, this idea that a royalty can be had using an old school example, Picasso's estate doesn't get any money when a Picasso sells for 25 million bucks at Christie's.
Mm-hmm.
But with a smart contract, it could be pre-written that next time it changes hands, the Picasso estate gets 10%.
Yeah,
that'd be sweet. Every time, picking up another $2.5 million every time someone spent 25 million on something that again and again and again.
Right. Yeah. If the value continues to go up, then
So
why wouldn't the original artist be compensated for that? Yeah.
Artists like that. So fine artists have started to think about it. Again, you don't need this to be digital art. It can be physical art. It can be an oil painting or an acrylic. It could be a house. It could be a car. It could be a sculpture. It doesn't matter. As long as it has a unique identifier on it, that's the original one. So whether it has an NFC chip on it, or you put a serial number on it, the artist's signature with a number, and you name the work, and now there's a contract on a blockchain that says you are the owner of this particular physical good, and here's the receipt to prove it. Remember, it's a receipt.
Yep. Well, yeah, that's essentially using the digital twin concept, right?
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it makes very much sense. Anybody that is wondering what that is, definitely grab a copy of the blockchain book. Shelly's been getting out there as an Amazon bestseller. Definitely something you want to dig into. Want to keep going with this. We want to take a quick break here so that we can make sure we get even more thoughts. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about how Web 3.0 can help agencies and brands here. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. We are here with Shelly Palmer, learning about blockchain, how all of this can benefit you as agencies, as brand marketers here. We just talked a little bit about how content creators are using NFTs and smart contracts to be able to protect their work, essentially continue to be compensated for it. What we'd love to hear from you, Shelly, is what does all of this mean? We talk about Web 3.0, smart contracts, blockchain, NFTs. What does this mean for the agencies and brands today? What should they be looking for and preparing for in the future?
It's a really good question, and it's an important distinction. Brands and agencies are two different kinds of entities with two different kinds of agendas. So let's start by talking about brands.
Okay.
Web3, again, there is no technically agreed upon definition. There are many different definitions. And Web3 and the metaverse are horrifyingly interchanged with one another, all without being explained past a point. But our definition for this conversation only, because it gives us a starting base, is that Web3 for us is a platform of decentralized tools that empower both users and creators to share in the value they create. A platform of decentralized tools. Decentralized meaning there is no central authority. This is hard for people to understand because in Web 2, the web we see around us today, when you think social media, you can name the central authorities. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's really simple. If you think about search, the central authority is Google or Bing in a much smaller sense. If you think about central authorities, ChatGPT, which is OpenAI, is a central authority. Netflix is a central authority when it comes to streaming movies. So we're very used to brands as central authorities. There's nothing decentralized about a brand. Nothing. So when you start saying, how does Web3, a decentralized tool set, serve something centralized like a brand? immediately you got a problem. Immediately. Because DeFi, decentralized finance, the theory here is that you have created, I'll make up a word, crypto economically secure, 2 words, crypto economically secure environments. What does that mean? It means you can't hurt someone without hurting yourself 10 times more, and you can't help yourself without helping your opponent 10 times more. It's crypto economically secure. And if you read the original white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that person or persons is, it's a 2008 writing. You can just look up Bitcoin white paper. And what you'll see in just the abstract, it's not very technical, it's easy to understand. It was written in 2008 as a response to the housing crisis. And Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that person or persons is, it's a pseudonym, wanted to stick it to the man. It's like, I think the finance system is broken. Here's a new finance system. It's decentralized. There's no United States government. There's no government authority. There's no central bank. There's this decentralized approach where no one can screw anybody, and I'm not going to get screwed. I don't need to know you. There are no banking intermediaries. No one's standing in my way. These are big concepts. They have nothing to do with a brand. Nike is the central authority about excellence in athletic wear. Hershey's is the central authority on chocolate bars. I mean, you go to a brand, you're going there because they make a brand promise, and that is from a centralized location that you can go to with your grievances. I don't think this shirt was great. It has a swoosh on it. Make it right, swoosh people. And the Nike guys are going to make it right, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be a brand for very long, not a trusted one. So where does a brand need to have a decentralized tool set? If you can't answer that question extremely well, then there is no need at the brand level. If, on the other hand, you say, you know what, I can imagine new business models for my goods or services where I can start by creating a fairly serious way to leverage my community of passion, my community of practice, or my community of interest, those communities that have formed around my brand, and I can empower them to share in the value that I'm creating and that they're helping me create. I've got a new business model now that will be based on the trust that the community has for my brand, but allow people who don't know each other outside of the central brand itself, users, to share in this value chain. This requires pretty decent thought on the part of the marketers. It is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Just like every single brand doesn't need a Twitter account, every single brand doesn't need an NFT or a smart contract, or doesn't need to be doing business in a decentralized environment. So brands are central authorities, and only in special circumstances could you see your way clear to creating decentralized tools that would enhance their positions as the central authorities in their worlds. If you go to the agency side, that's a little different, because agencies, back in the day and even today, their job is to enhance and help their clients communicate their advertising and marketing messages, to drive velocity at retail, whatever they're tasked to do. There are many kinds of agencies, right? It's media buying and planning. They're creative agencies. It's not one size fits all anymore. So there'll be some contract and some mandate between the agency, and that client agency relationship is fiduciary. And the goal here is to, your mandate is to buy the media as cheaply as possible, do creative as best you can, analyze the market, like whatever your job is. It could be a PR agency. There's a million kinds of agencies, and each one has its own specialty. Here, there are very clear, very, very clear things that agencies can do to help brands. And first and foremost is to provide the platforms, because most brands do not have enough engineers, do not have enough skilled technicians, and never will, to mount and stage a smart contract program that isn't part of their main value chain. We see fraud prevention, we see other uses of of blockchain and smart contracts inside of manufacturing and big brands across everything from healthcare to packaged goods. But in the marketing departments, we just don't see it. What we see is a lot of people doing these one-offs, hiring companies that are specialized in NFTs or specialized in blockchain. Agencies have a big opportunity to provide the rails, both the payment rails and the tools themselves, to easily mount smart contract projects and Web3 projects that combine central and decentralized tools to help their clients quickly do these kinds of projects and then maintain them. So I think there's a giant opportunity for agencies to jump on this. The agencies we're working with are all trying to create platforms that are leverageable by their clients, providing really good services to the brands that literally can never have enough engineers, just never.
Yeah, it does. It creates that opportunity there, and I'd be curious to hear. Do you have any examples, or even just areas that you would point some of our agency members here towards to say, you know what, go study up on this. Go look at these people who are doing it right.
I think Nike's doing it right. They've done a really good job. The NBA has done it right with Dapper Labs. And they've tried to strike lightning twice with NFL All Day.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, it's not as successful because of the crypto winter and the lack of speculators. But what's really important about NFL All Day and what's still important about NBA Top Shot is that they allow fans to have a richer, deeper experience. Mm-hmm. It's a closed environment that creates real value for the league, both leagues. It creates the value pretty much for everyone who's touching it everywhere, including the fans. Mm-hmm. And the execution is really good. So I think those are good places to go and look. Nike's done a really interesting job. Eric Redmond is the guy that runs the Nike Metaverse project, which is the catch-all, the Nikeverse kind of world for those guys. He's done a really nice job exploring, and all the projects they've done are worth a good look.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of content and great places to look, your book has been a great resource for me and for others that I've pointed it to, just in terms of being able to get a quick understanding of what exactly Web 3.0 is. So yeah, thank you for writing it. You also have another project though, Metacademy, and I was really intrigued to hear you talk about this idea that it's books as they currently stand in content, it's always changing. This world that we're talking about right now, it's changing. And since the last time that you and I have had a conversation, we've had crypto winter. Things have kind of flipped on their heads in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Now, what you've talked about with Metacademy and how you basically translated your book, I'd love to hear the thought process behind that. Can you kind of tell us what was it that you said, okay, there's a better way to do this rather than printing a book every 6 months?
Well, it was the book Blockchain was written, most of it was written in 2018. Mm-hmm. And about the middle of 2020, it got obvious that crypto was super hot. Mm-hmm. Blockchain was super hot. And it was, though the pandemic was still very active, it was time to put the book out. I was surprised at how much of the 2018 content was still totally relevant. Mm. But there was a lot of 2020 content, and put the book on Amazon. It became a bestseller very quickly, mostly because it was well SEO'd. So let's be clear. It's not that I think I did anything genius. I think that the title SEOs well, and I think I've learned how to write a well SEO description, and there's some marketing discipline in there that maybe the average bearer wouldn't have, applied. Mm-hmm. But it started to do incredibly well. The problem was that the second edition had to be done like 2 weeks later. not because it was selling out or anything, because it's an ebook. At the time, it was only an ebook. There wasn't a paperback version of it. There was no way to keep up. And so it became obvious that we needed to have some kind of environment where we could constantly update the things we were teaching in the book that changed. And I didn't want to do a plain website because it didn't make any sense. And I didn't want to charge people for it because that didn't make any sense. So we built this site called Metacademy, 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 the word meta and academy.
Simple, right?
Or Met and Academy, but Metacademy.com. And the goal here was to build a Web3 site that taught Web3. Now, we are constantly revising it. The original site was about NFTs and crypto. We have an entire other course of study. I think it's a bunch of chapters we're just about to put up that are about Web3 and the metaverse. And then we have another full book's worth of information about chat prompting and generative AI. So we're going to expand this out quite a bit. And the Web3 part of it is less important than just the ability to keep the content just current. I am stunned. Even our business is what's new, what's next, and what does it mean for your business? That's what we do at the Palmer Group. I won't call us future casters in any way. Our job is just to help our client companies understand what's new, what's next, and what it means, and sort of get everybody out. What does it look like? 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months, a couple of years. And past that, you're guessing, but you have a pretty good idea of how some of this stuff will work over the next couple of years. I tell you what, I'm reading 100 Chrome tabs a day, 120 Chrome tabs every day. We put out a newsletter every morning. I'm used to reading 30 or 40. I'm not used to reading 120 Chrome tabs a day to stay current. So we needed a way to impart that information every single day. And the way to do it is to create these learning environments where people can go with very specific goals and in bite-sized chunks that don't overwhelm them, get the part they need, and know that that's the most up-to-date version of whatever that is. So that's why I started Metacademy. And it will evolve over time. It's continuing to evolve. We update it literally every day. So the book is great, and we try to keep it updated too. We're on a schedule with the book that we update the book on Amazon every 2 months. We make a new edition. It's still called the second edition because we're having an argument with Amazon about the way the paperback cover works. So
always those details.
That's a KDP issue with Amazon, but we update the content about every 60 days because we have to. We don't have a choice.
Right. Yeah. If you don't, then all of a sudden it's outdated.
It's completely useless.
Yeah. It's a great way for us to think about that, and a great way for us to be thinking about how you can educate your community. Going back to that idea of loyalty idea, keeping that community involved. If you have somebody that is trusting you as a brand, as a resource for knowledge, information, even just whatever they're passionate about, and you've got an entire community of those people to have an area where you can essentially go and keep them up to date. I think it's a great way for us to continue to look at that. It should be a great inspiration point for a lot of our folks that are constantly thinking about how you stay up to date and how you keep your communities involved. So thank you, Shelly. This has been fantastic. I've got a lot of great takeaways out of this. Really enjoy hearing you talk about how NFTs and smart contracts will impact us as we go beyond and into the future. I think it's a great lesson for us to be able to take away. Really think about it is what are you doing to enrich and really deepen that connection with your community? How can you utilize this technology? And I love the idea of just simply doing what you're doing and get them the information that matters. If we can continue to do that, I think we're in a great space.
Want to stay current? We have a free email newsletter comes out every day.
Perfect.
You can get it at shellypalmer.com. I'm easy to find. Shelly at shellypalmer.com is my email address. Send me an email. It's fine. We're totally happy to answer your questions. We do the best we can. This is a never-ending battle, and we're all kind of in it together. So totally happy to help, and I truly appreciate the opportunity today.
Absolutely. Shelly, thank you very much for joining us. Look forward to staying in touch with you as the world of Web 3.0 continues to evolve. Thank you very much for joining us on What Happens in Marketing, and we'll talk to you all soon.